Okay. So today will be kind of a power flow, full body. We'll touch on all the major movers, core, arms, legs, back, all the important things. So today will be not so much stretching and mobility, but more strengthening and engaging. So today I have either yoga blocks, I've got 2 yoga blocks today, or water bottles. I'll show you how to modify with using the water bottles. Ideally they'll be the same height. What we're trying to use the water bottles to substitute for is having our blocks placed like this and our hands on our blocks. So the blocks are more ideal, but the water bottles might work. Come here, Bear. Come on. Come on. And then a pillow can also substitute for one of the blocks in a couple of sequences that we'll be doing. So start again in a comfortable seat, using your block or pillow to elevate your sit bones slightly. And as we've started the other classes, we just take a few moments to feel at home on our mat, in our seat, in our body, whether you had a productive morning already or you're just waking up, you're used to demanding treats already. So find your comfortable seat, Sukhasana, that we've talked about before. Sweet or gentle, easy, comfortable seat. Ideally something that you won't have to adjust or move out of for a few minutes. When you settle into your seat, be aware of all the points of contact you have with your feet. If you're sitting on shins like this, notice the tops of your feet pressing into the mat, your shins pressing into the mat, your knees gently pressed down, and then your sit bones rooting down onto your block or your pillow. The more we root down and press down into the earth, into our seat, the higher or the taller we can feel ourselves grow. So we'll stick with that theme during our class today. We root down to rise up. If you're sitting cross-legged, notice what maybe your ankles are resting on the ground or the mat. You can always feel free sitting cross-legged as well to use a block or a pillow to prop up one of your legs. I notice imbalances in between one of my knees or hips and the other, so having a prop here is really nice instead of trying to force that knee all the way down to the mat. We use props, we love them, they help us. Okay, so you have your comfortable seat. Settle into your seat with your eyes closed. Let the backs of your hands rest on your lap, the palms facing up for receiving. And a couple moments to get in tune with your breath here. Notice if you're breathing sort of shallow from the top part of your chest, you feel your collarbones moving and separating with your breath. See if you can tap into a little bit of lower belly deep breathing here. Oftentimes we're subconsciously pulling our belly in, like we're sucking in our gut a little bit, which is great for building strength in our core, but what we want to do in this deep breathing is kind of let the belly just be relaxed and loose. So big inhale, feel your lower belly expand, and the exhale, the belly draws in. Be conscious in Sukhasana here that you're not overly leaning forward or rounding the back. Relaxed shoulders. We should feel this sense of elongating the muscles on the side of the neck here as our shoulders rest down. We don't want to be clenched up here. And keep moving with a deep belly breath. It might help you to feel this if you place the palm of one hand on your belly. And again, on that inhale, really let your belly be full, like almost like you have a food baby, like you're really sticking out that belly, engaging the diaphragm to breathe deeply. On your exhale, now you can start to tone that core, draw the belly button in. Bring some nice gentle movements to your head and your neck, rolling your head around in any way that feels good for you. Side to side, maybe sweeping, rolling, tucking the chin forward, or you can keep the head gaze neutral here. Take one ear to the other shoulder and other side. Total freedom to move your head and neck around any way that you need it. You'll see me in my classes, I focus a lot on neck mobility. I'm dealing with a persistent neck injury right now. So hopefully addressing movement in the cervical spine will help any of you prevent a neck injury. Now bring the head back to a neutral gaze, pointing forward. Bring both arms straight out to the side, and we're going to take internal rotation for one shoulder. So flipping a palm down, really pointedly roll that shoulder in, and then external rotation for the other shoulder. So we'll have kind of opposite movement for our shoulders here. One tips down and in, while the other rotates back. So I'm flipping my palms opposite directions, one forward and one rotating back, and we'll switch side to side, alternating. You might notice little imbalances. One side feels more flexible than the other. Totally normal. Now I like to really exaggerate this, bringing my torso side to side as well as I alternate my arms here. And now wrap the arms around to the back side. And tip your chin and head down. And switch the way your arms are wrapped, so opposite arm crosses on top. Okay, we'll tip forward into our tabletop, so you can move the blocks to the side. Move anything out of the way that you need to. Find our traditional alignment for tabletop here. Our shoulders stacked above wrists, hips stacked above the knees. Now think about a type of cat-cow motion for the torso, but what we're going to do is circle the torso around an imaginary object. So instead of cat-cow where we go up and down, we're going to add lateral movement as well. So I think it was last class we talked about a seated type of movement the same way for the torso. Imagine bringing your torso around the circumference of a globe. So same thing here, really get lateral as well as the vertical movement. You can circle several times one direction and then switch to the other. Slight bend in the elbows is okay. And neutral torso again here, traditional cat-cow. On the inhale, cow, tipping the chin and tailbone upward, and the exhale, cat pose, like a scaredy cat. You're arching your back a lot. Draw that belly in, let the head hang down. Now sit the hips back onto the heels. We'll get ourselves ready with some props here. You can use a pillow for this, maybe fold it in half, or a yoga block. The water bottle might be nice because it'll add a little bit more weight, but it will probably be harder to hold in place. So I would recommend starting with the pillow or the block, and I'll show you first with the pillow. In our tabletop here, we're going to take the pillow, stick it behind the right knee, and squeeze the right heel up towards the right bum, and then we'll lift that leg. So really focus on squeezing the heel into the hip here and keeping that right foot flexed. Think about keeping the right hip rolled down towards the mat and pulsing to lift from the heel. So we don't want to roll our hip open this way. We want to keep that hip pin down in place where it is. And 10 little squeeze pulses here. The last one, lift and hold. Keep the belly engaged, no dip in the lower back. I had to self-adjust there a little bit. And then just release that knee back down. Keep squeezing the hip towards squeezing the heel towards the hip. And we're gonna take it out to the side. So kind of like a little fire hydrant move here. Again for 10. The whole time here, keep thinking about what your hands are doing. Gripping that mat with the fingertips will help prevent wrist injuries. And last one, hold. And lower the knee. We'll switch the pillow or block to the other side right away. Again, lifting, really squeezing that heel in, foot is flexed. Little pulses, little lifts for 10. What you'll start to feel is the outside of the leg that's still in contact with the mat starting to work hard as well. Those stabilizing muscles are great. The last one, lift and hold. And lower, now hinging the hip out to the side. I'll show you a different perspective. And lift and hold for that last one. Really already feeling the burn. And lower down. Release that pillow. Take your knees about as wide as the mat and tip the feet in together. Sink the hips back to a wide knee child's pose. Feeling surrender and release in this resting pose here. And now back up to a tabletop. So place the tops of the feet in contact with the mat, not tucked under like this, so tops of the feet are laying flat. Press into your fingers, all of your fingertips gripping into the mat. Lift the knees about 2 inches or so and let them hover in place. A hovering tabletop. Don't know what the official term is for this. Keep your belly lifted and engaged. Keep breathing in and out through the nose. And lower those knees down. Tuck the toes now. Lift the knees and bring the hips back to a downward facing dog. Pedal your feet left and right. Now we'll take it back down to a tabletop again. If you're starting to feel any pain or discomfort in your wrist, you can take knuckles onto the mat like this. Another modification would be forearms, but that'll make the next sequence a little challenging. Something that helps me protect my wrist too is using the blocks, gripping with my fingertips around the edge of the block like this, because it really helps distribute the weight a little bit. So if you need to modify your wrist, you can. Now from our tabletop here, lift and extend right leg straight behind you. Lift and extend the left arm in front. So we have opposite leg and arm extended. Now same concept with this right hip here. Keep it rolled down, not splaying the hip open here. So keeping that hip rolled down forces us to use the glute maximus to lift. And left arm extended out front. Moving as you breathe here. The sequence will be inhale, extend your fingers and toes as long as you can, and exhale, round the back, bring the elbow and knee together, slightly drop the head down. Inhale as you extend, and exhale as you bring together. For 5. On your last one, elbow and knee come together and hold the pose. Keep breathing. Think about lifting your right knee higher, closer into your chest. So you're really using core muscles to create compression here. And then send it out nice and long. Keep the right leg lifted, lower the left hand down. Pivot the left toes out to the left side and start to roll that right arm and shoulder up and open. You can place the right toes down at the far edge of the mat. And now take right arm overhead so this right side body becomes as long as possible here. If you want more strengthening for the side body here, you can lift the right toes. It becomes quite a bit harder. Now again, similar movement with our breath. On an exhale, elbow and knee come together. And inhale, they go long. Again, you can place the toes down or keep them elevated. Exhale as we crunch, and inhale as we extend. One more time, and we'll bring elbow and knee together and hold. And extend. Sweep this right hand behind you, and now we'll lift the right foot, bend right knee, if you can, making contact between the right hand and foot. So now we're going for a bit of a back bend here in a half bow. Press the right foot actively into the right hand to deepen that back bend. Gently release. Now send the right leg back, keep it lifted, roll the right hand and shoulder down, place the right hand down, pivot the left foot in, tuck the left toes, press into that left foot, a three-legged downward facing dog. Bend the right knee and now open up the right hip. So that right foot will start to tip over to the left side of your body. Now be careful here. What tends to happen is we really open so much that our chest starts to cave up underneath. What we want to do is keep even weight distributed through both hands. So that might mean squaring your chest down a little bit more and opening that right hip a little bit less. Now start to close the right hip, lower the right foot down, back to a tabletop. And on to the other side. Left leg goes out long, right arm extends, and find our sequence with our breath. Exhale, elbow, knee together. Inhale, extend for 5 total. Last one, hold after that exhale, hold the pose, not the breath. And now send it out. Left leg lifted, lower the right hand, pivot the right toes out, and lift that left arm overhead. We'll turn around here. So your right foot back here is kind of like a kickstand. And now the side crunches. Exhale, elbow, knee touch. Inhale, take it out. Last one, hold together best as you can. And send it out. Left leg is still lifted, roll the left hand back down. And lifting up. Now we get to open that left hip, bend the left knee. Lower the left foot down. Take either a downward facing dog to rest or a child's pose. Child's pose will probably be nice to relieve the tension on the wrists. If you maybe want more of a challenge, more strengthening option, you can take and hold that downward facing dog. I'm going to give my wrists a break. Okay, now lifting back up. A little more work for our core. I've been kind of focusing on that compression feeling, lifting a knee to a chest here. From our tabletop, bringing the elbow to the knee together here. So we'll keep working with that theme. And here is where you want to have either your blocks or your water bottles. If you have close by, maybe even stacks of books would work out really nice. Now here is where we need to be really careful with our water bottles. We'll start just on the knees, hands on the water bottles, and I'll show you what this will look like. Be mindful that they are not very stable, so we'll have to move very slow and deliberately here. So shifting weight onto the left knee, lift, extend the right leg behind you. And what we're going to try to do is round the back now, bend the right knee, draw that right thigh up towards the right, towards the chest, and step the right foot through without using momentum at all. So if you don't have your hands elevated here, what you'll probably have to do to accomplish this is swing the leg to the side and then jerk that foot forward, and we lose that engagement of the core. So with the hands elevated, it gives us enough room for clearance that we can really mindfully draw the thigh as close to the chest as possible and step the foot through nice and controlled. Once you step the foot through and forward, shift those hips down, and then we'll take it right back. Switching sides, left leg goes straight back, draw that knee up to the chest, step the foot through, shift the hips forward. Okay, so we'll just go back and forth like this a couple times. Now really on this big step forward, I'm trying my hardest to actually get my thigh, maybe even my knee, to touch my rib cage. And the harder we compress there, the easier it will be to step the foot forward without momentum. If we want to use our blocks, we've got different levels to the block that we can use, but same concept. Now we can add even another component to this, where we step our foot forward, and we want to use the same amount of precision when we step the foot back. So we're forward here. Think about drawing the thigh towards the chest. Lift that foot, see if you can let it hover in place where it is. It's way harder than it looks. And then take that foot back, again, without rotating to the side or without using momentum. So thigh comes to the chest, step the foot forward, sink those hips down and forward slightly, and then we'll bring it back, glue the thigh to the chest, pick up the foot, let it hover, and then take it back. Do one or two more on each side. You also have the option here, if you want to try it, to take this up to a downward facing dog and do the same sequence. Probably not very stable on the water bottles, so again, please be extremely careful. But if you have the blocks, you can do the same here. Draw the thigh towards the chest, and you'll notice I'm really lifting up off of that back foot to round my back as much as possible, and then stepping that foot through to the top of the mat. Okay, now lower yourself back down, move the blocks, pillows, water bottles to the side. We'll just take a moment to stretch out our core now. So hands come to the top of the mat, take them nice and wide. Scooch those knees back just a little bit, and we'll take a really high supported cobra here. If this is too much for your lower back, you can take elbows down, a sphinx, lifting the chest. Another option here, what I like to really do is take my hands even a little bit wider, about even with the edge of the mat, and lift as I inhale, lower as I exhale. So I'm pressing as much as my body weight as I can into my hands so that my back is not working here. The object is to stretch the front side of the body, stretching out our core that we were just compressing and making tight. Big stretch, and then I'll sort of twist my shoulders side to side. Okay, now bring the hands in close to the body, placing the palms down. Hands are about even with the rib cage, just below the shoulders. Elbows stay really close to the side body, tucked in. We're going to do our little micro chaturanga practices again. If you're comfortable in your practice with chaturanga, we'll basically do chaturanga push-ups. I've been practicing this for quite a while, and I still prefer to keep my knees down, so there's no shame at all in taking a modified version here. My preference is to focus on the form rather than going as deep as possible into the pose. So I'll show you here. First of all, I'm going to press myself up through a chaturanga, essentially. My knees stay in contact with the mat, keep my belly lifted, so not sagging our core down here like this. So belly is lifted and engaged, elbows stay close to the side body. I lower down about halfway to a chaturanga and hold. And then I'll lift back up. Now you can take this at your own pace. You can lower down and hold for several seconds if you want. You can do repetitions. You can lower down into a chaturanga, 90-degree angle for your elbows. So what we don't want is shoulders coming down below the elbows, okay? But at some point, do press yourself back up here. I'll just do a couple little repetitions like this. The whole time, keep your triceps really close to the rib cage. And then I'll take it back to a child's pose. Okay, placing the palms down, tuck the toes, lift up to our downward facing dog. One at a time, walk your feet up to the top of the mat towards your hands. Big bend in the knees here. Here's another time to practice that compression feeling in your core. If you have okay hamstring flexibility here, which mine are pretty tight today, so I keep a big bend in my knees here. I try to step my feet all the way up to my hands, and when I lift my foot, I'm having to use compression here in my belly and my deep hip to lift that foot. So that concept again of these moves that we did is all working to create compression here. So forward fold at the top of the mat. Just let your upper body ragdoll for a moment. You're welcome to experiment here with more stretching for the hamstrings by maybe straightening the knees slightly. Or just keep them bent and fold. Now, as we stand up, we want to make this really active and engaged. So think about what's happening with your feet here. We can very easily stand in a passive way where we're not really thinking about it. But instead, I want you to think about how all of your individual toes are like kickstands for you, helping you balance. Feel the heels rooting down. Feel the arches of your feet lifting. You're pressing down so hard through the rest of your feet that the arches start to lift. Squeeze your glutes to engage here. Lift your belly up into your spine, and then lift yourself upright nice and slow. So we're rooting down to help ourselves rise up. So now standing at the top of the mat, we'll start to work these big supporting muscles in our legs a little bit more now. Start to shift your weight to your right foot, keeping micro bend in the knee. We kind of did this last week as well. On an inhale, lift arms overhead, lift the left foot, keep the left knee bent. Now, more challenge this week. Extend the left heel out. Do your best to keep the whole left leg lifted now. That quad is working really hard. Even your standing leg working really hard to brace you here. It's going to start to sink down because we can't defeat gravity. That's okay. Just do your best to keep lifting it. And then we'll hinge forward at the waist. Big bend in the standing knee. Before we place that back foot down at the back of the mat, maybe you hover yourself through a warrior three, Virabhadrasana 3 for just a moment, and then place those toes down. Now make sure you keep the bend in the right knee here. For now, our hips are squared facing forward, so the back heel is lifted, and there's a bend in the back knee. Arms overhead here. If you want to piggyback on some of the concepts from other classes, you can take a block or a pillow in between your arms that are lifted and squeeze together from side to side. That way we're working stabilizing muscles in our shoulders as well. Now what we'll do is lower the back knee and tap. Lift back up for 5, 4, 3, 2. Feel that right foot working. Last one. We're lifting, still bent in that back knee. Send your body forward, hovering over the front knee. Squeezing my block side to side if you choose to do that. Now, humble warrior. We'll take the block to the side. Interlace hands behind your back. And what we're going to do is tip our torso and head down inside of this right leg. Still keeping the big bend in the right knee. Lift those arms up behind, let the head hang down. A lot of people, the tendency will be to rest our torso on top of that right thigh and give yourself a break. We want to build strength in that right leg, so we're lowering torso down inside of the right foot. Then we'll take a little break, release the hands inside of the right foot. You can lower the back knee and take yourself down to a version of lizard. Whatever feels nice for you. You might like to have a block here to prop you up. Personally, I like to keep my torso lifted in a lizard. Think about drawing the right knee in to that right armpit instead of splaying open to the side. Using our muscles here to internally rotate this right femur. Really challenge ourselves to find stillness in this challenging pose. Everybody's favorite to fidget during the challenging ones. And now we'll lift ourselves back up. If you're on your forearms, come back to those hands pressing into the mat. Tuck the left toes under. Lift that back knee. Now wiggle your right foot into the center of the mat. So you'll want to swap the right hand to the outside of the right foot. Press down into the right foot. Feel your hips buoyant, not sinking down. So really lifted in the hips here. Again, we're pressing down into our feet so we can lift ourselves higher up. So active in that right foot. You can separate your toes out a little bit if you want. It gives you a wider base to work with. And then we'll lift up, nice and controlled. Pivot the left heel down now to a warrior two. Send the arms wide from one another, gazing forward over the right hand. Be sure not to clench up your shoulders here. I don't know about you, but my right thigh here is on fire. Take right elbow bent to the right knee, the left arm overhead. Extended side angle. Some of us might want to take right hand to the mat and the left arm overhead. Maybe the right hand to a block. Or we can keep the elbow on the knee. Now last one here, you're gonna love it. Start to take the weight out of your right hand, but keep your torso exactly where it is. Bring the right hand forward to parallel the left. You're holding a very, very heavy beach ball. Trying to send it forward. Right thigh on fire. Okay, now pivot forward onto those left toes. We're gonna step ourselves forward. Same amount of control. Bring the left thigh up again. Send the left heel out. Best as you can, keep it lifted. And with control, lower the left leg down. Float your arms down to your side. Try not to adjust and wiggle around here. Take advantage of a couple restorative breaths. And on to the next side. Shifting your weight to the left leg. Big inhale as we lift, pressing down actively into that left foot. We grow taller. Send the right heel out. Anti-gravity work here. Just do the best you can. Try not to give up. Keep that leg lifted. Even as it starts to sink down, you got this. Don't give up. Start to hinge at the waist, bend the standing knee, hover here, our warrior three. Doesn't have to be totally perfect, but we want to use as much control as possible to place that back foot down. Here's the opportunity if you want to have your block or your pillow in between your hands, creating stability for shoulder joints. We'll tap and lower that back knee. 5, 4, 3, 2, last one, make it the best one. Lifting up, still bent in the left knee, hovering torso overhead, fierce warrior. Squeezing that blocker pillow if you have it. And place it to the side. Arms come back, interlace the fingers the opposite way, and pivot that torso and head down inside of the left thigh. Arms go overhead from behind. Keep the bend in the left knee. And gently release the hands. Take them down inside of the left foot. Try to find the same version of lizard as you had on the first side. So again, I keep my block. I keep my torso nice and high because I know that I can hold this pose, this version of lizard, a lot longer than if I were to take down forearms. I would be fidgeting within about 10 seconds. So I keep it nice and high and lifted, drawing the left knee as close as I can to my side body, actually hugging into my left armpit. And find your stillness. When we let ourselves get distracted by wanting to fix our hair or move our shirt around, we're stealing our focus from the pose, and we're not truly honoring the pose. So a big part of this practice is training your mental focus to avoid the temptations to fidget and wiggle and adjust. See if here, for the last couple seconds, you can actively press down into your left foot a little bit more. I caught myself slacking off with my grounding. So I'm pressing now more actively into all of my toes. Come up off of your forearms. We'll move our block to the side. Wiggle that left foot into the center of the mat. Tuck the right toes. Press down. Even through the pad the ball of your right foot back here so that heel is lifted. My left foot now pressing down a lot. If I'm passive, kind of hanging out here, my hands are supporting most of my weight, not much is going on. But when I start to press down actively, I all of a sudden feel my left adductor start to activate as well. And then we'll lift up, pivot the right heel down, our warrior two. So arms go wide. Caught me adjusting my hair on my face. Look forward over the left hand. Take left elbow to left knee, the right arm overhead. And the finisher, the heavy beach ball. So trying our best to keep our torso where it is. Take the weight out of the left arm, send it forward. This beach ball is made out of concrete. It's heavy. And now pivot. Start facing forward and step. Lift that right thigh. Send the right heel out. Last big effort here. And then float the right foot down. Let your arms float down to your side. Now just for good measure, before we start to cool down, with your feet together at the top of your mat, we'll work on some stabilizing for the lower body, but with the feet together, instead of here, we're stabilizing all the muscles around the bent knee quite significantly, and the back leg is more or less for balance, also flexibility here. Both our feet together. We'll work just a little bit more stabilizing for lower body, because who doesn't love that? So toes and heels touching if you can. If they don't quite touch, just as close to touching as possible is great. The feet are parallel to the long edge of the mat, so we're not standing with toes splayed open, or we're not pigeon-toed. I'll start by drawing your belly in, soften your knees, gently tuck your tailbone forward. Just for reference right now, I have sweat dripping down me in many places. This is a tough one. So start to bend the knees a lot more. Really draw that belly in. Lift arms overhead. If you want to continue with that theme, stabilizing the shoulders, you could have your block in your hands here. Sink the hips down even more. Utkatasana, chair pose. Now, tendency for a lot of people is to lean upper body forward and stick your butt out. But what we want to do is scoop the tailbone down, lift the upper body back, have your biceps about even with your ears. Now again, we're pressing down actively through the feet. So hard that we can start to feel a little bit lighter in our pose here. Challenge yourself to bring your upper body back and sit down a little bit more. Big challenge here, lift both of your heels at the same time. And now we'll press into the feet, the toes. Whoops, lost my balance. We'll come all the way up on the tippy toes. Lower the heels down, step the feet apart about as wide as your mat and fold at the waist. A nice, calming forward fold. Now, just like with downward facing dog, I like to pedal my feet in this forward fold. So I'll bend one knee as I straighten the other. Kind of helps me explore the flexibility of my entire hamstring and not just the longest point right down the center. When I'm bending one knee and shifting to the other side, you can feel all the different points or places on that hamstring stretching out. Other option here is to ragdoll the upper body, cross the opposite hand to opposite elbow. Just let yourself hang and give yourself a little rock or sway side to side. Another option from here, if you were feeling really tight in your shoulders during practice, you can take hands together behind your back, interlace the fingers, and now over your head, let those hands start to fall down towards the mat. Nice release for the shoulders. Okay, release those hands. We're going to keep our feet nice and wide here. Angle the toes outward just slightly. Take the elbows to the inside of the knees, hands together at Anjali Mudra, your heart, and start to sink your hips down into the yogi squat, Malasana. Ideally, we keep our heels in contact with the mat here. If your heels start to lift at some point, that's your edge for how far down you bring your hips, okay? Actively press your hands together and draw your chest in towards your hands. And then release the hands, tip yourself forward, lifting those hips, draw your feet in together, and we'll come to sit down on the mat. Okay, nice and sweaty today. Let's see, draw your knees into your chest and roll over the tailbone onto your back. Rock or roll side to side. Now place the left foot on the mat, the left knee bent, and the outside of the right ankle presses on top of the left thigh. Reclined pigeon. So this might be our full pose for some of us. To deepen a little bit, you can gently guide the right knee away as long as you're not shifting the alignment of your hips here. To deepen even more, you can lift the left thigh and interlace the fingers behind it, gently drawing the left thigh in, and your right elbow can guide the right knee away. And then release. We'll switch sides. So the right foot is placed down, left ankle comes to the top of the right thigh. And again, several ways to modify here. As usual with these cool down poses, I'm just hanging out with my eyes closed. That way I'm less distracted by external things and I'm preparing myself for rest. I can feel things like my sweat starting to dry up, my heart rate is returning to normal, my whole body temperature is cooling back down. And release that reclined pigeon. Place both feet on the mat, the feet as wide as the mat. I'll turn here to show you a different view. So we just had external rotation for both of the hips, and now we want internal rotation. So keeping the feet and knees wide, tip both of the knees together to the left side like windshield wipers. The key here is to have your feet wide. If you bring your feet together and you tip, you get a lumbar twist, but what we want is internal rotation for this top hip. So both knees fall to the left and feel this right knee start to fall down and internally rotate the hip. A self-adjustment you can take is the left foot placed on top of the right knee. The weight will gently help this rotation a little bit more. You can take arms overhead here and really feel that right side around your pelvis and your hip stretching and opening. And then release to the other side. The feet are still nice and wide. Tip the knees together. Use that self-adjustment if it felt good. And then we're prepared for Shavasana. So let yourself sprawl out. Your feet splay open to the sides. I showed in the last class a way to modify for back pain here. If you have props, blocks, water bottles, pillows, you can place them right under your, the bottom part of your butt here under your legs. Let your arms rest at your side, the palms facing up. And the challenge in our Shavasana is trying not to be so distracted by external sensations that we feel that we have to move or adjust or shift ourselves. If you're feeling pain internally, we modify to avoid that. But if you feel, oh, I just need to fix my leggings or I need to move my hair out of the way, try your best to avoid those temptations right now. And really let yourself be still and allow your nervous system to reset. I will wrap up here, so again, I don't get kicked off of the live feed, but take your time in Shavasana. Be really careful coming out of it that you roll to your side and press yourself up using your hands. Take a few moments in quiet reflection if it serves you, and thank you for joining. I'll have this video posted up on YouTube later, and I'll see you guys on Sunday.